Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I thought I'd stay in the studio. It's a bit cold outside. It's been a shocking winter this year. It's been so cold and so windy and unpleasant that you haven't really had much chance to get out and have some fun in the camper van and see the sights of Scotland. So we're in the studio today and we're going to have a go at a little bit of a still life. Painting from life, I think, is the best way to go with watercolour painting. You can use photographs, but they have limitations, and it's important to understand the limitations of those photographs. What's problematical about them really is that you're copying something that the camera sees. And the camera sees things slightly different from what we see in our eyes. The values or the tones are different. Sometimes you can have a face where this side is in perfect exposure, but then it goes here and it's turned incredibly dark. But in real life, it's not the case. It's a more even exposure. We're going to be painting some guinea pigs today, and they're China ones here. They're collected by our family over the years, and the two big ones represent Tanya and me, and the three small ones represent our children. So they're nice little things, nice family mementos. If you can find something to paint around the house, that'd be great too. And something that means something's always nice. Make a nice frame picture. Right, so I'm going to paint the big figure first, right in the middle, and that is a pepper shaker. It's a salt and pepper thing we've got here. Right, so what I'll do is I'll start with the scale. So that's the nose, and that's the tail, the back end of it. So that's the scale. So everything now has to fit within this. And these two marks are incredibly important. So it sets the scale, which is really important. So now it's just a question of cracking on with the drawing. And I like to have very much a free approach with my drawing. I don't like to be too careful. And the reason for that is really I'm not really interested in a fine drawing. I'm wanting to produce a watercolour painting, and that isn't necessarily anything to do with drawing. One of the benefits of drawing quickly, I think, as well, is it stops you being too perfect. And watercolour isn't about being perfect. It's about interpreting the scene that you've got in front of you. One of the things about when you don't do scale correctly of a drawing, the drawing gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And you'll notice that you start doing maybe a portrait or something, and you say that's the size it's going to be, but in the end it ends up twice the size. That's always a scale problem. So yeah, I can sense mine it's already going a little bit bigger. And that's fine. Just to give me the hints of what it's all about. So this drawing, I would say, is probably taken about a minute or so, and that's good enough. So I'll paint or draw in one of the little babies. I think this one is my youngest daughter. So they're just a sort of very simple shape really, just like a ball of clay. What I like with drawing is swiftness. I like to be quick with my drawing. As I said earlier, it's about a painting, not about a drawing. So we want to finish this as soon as we can. I try not to use a rubber. I very rarely use a rubber, unless I've really made a real mess of it. And rubbers, it's not really a good idea to use a rubber. And the reason is, a mistake is a clue to making it better. And if you rub out all your mistakes, you're rubbing out all your clues. Now the final one, which is Tanya. I think that's Tanya. She looks a little bit prettier than the middle one, so this must be Tanya. Can't be me. Can't be me.
I'm the salt.
I'm the pepper. A bit spicy. So I'm just trying to rush through this really. We want to get to the painting really. So here's my palette, and I thought I'd remind you quickly of the colours that I've got there. So it's raw umber, burnt sienna, burnt umber, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, cadmium yellow pale, raw sienna and yellow ochre, and then that's terra vert, which I don't really use, that was just a bit of an experiment. Veridian, hooker's green, ivory black, white, cadmium red light, Alizarin crimson, and that's cobalt violet, which I rarely use. So not many colours really. So it's a small piece of paper that I've got today, and it's 10 by 7 inches, so not very big at all. But the subject matter is small as well, and the paper, as normal, is Fabriano Artistico paper in a natural white, and as opposed to a high white colour, and this is the knot version or the cold press version. Okay, so I'm having a look at the subject matter now, and I'm taking in the colours, and I'm going to have a go at painting the middle big one first. And you can see the colours are quite interesting there. I put a general wash over, and I love cerulean blue. I find that to be a really interesting colour. It's a great, I don't know, just I don't necessarily see it there all the time, but I just like it. It gives variety. When you have a brown subject matter, which I've got here, I think it's nice to introduce the counterbalance, which is blue. Okay, so I'll start with this. So it's just plain cerulean blue, and we're going to pop this in. You'll wipe a bit out because it make a brighter bit of nose. Okay, and then I'm going to change the colour and use more of an accurate colour. So I would say a burnt umber, maybe in a little bit of burnt sienna and raw sienna. Trying to get a reasonably close value of it. I love variety of paint colour. I think that's a really interesting thing. And now I'm going to go for the central colour, which is burnt umber and ultramarine blue. It's quite dark really. And you can see I'm quite generous with the paint. I try and attack it as swiftly as I can. And then you have a mark up here. So again with the ultramarine blue. Trying to observe as much as I can and think. Okay. And then we come to the back. So I'm going to use burnt umber for that. A bit of raw sienna. Very attacking method. One of the things about painting from life is that you're normally quite time short, so you really have to get on with these things. Okay, so I'll let that dry for a bit. So that's the first layer, the first attacking layer in, and there are errors in there. but I just try and overlook them really. Don't want to worry too much about that. There's enough to worry about. Right, so I'm going to give a bit more definition to the colours now, sort of darkening areas of it, and so it's really it is a black. And my go-to black really is burnt umber and ultramarine blue. I like those two colours. So let's try and dull that down, or darken it down. Trying to get the shapes. And I think that's good enough there. And then we're going to come to the back, hind, with a little bit more burnt sienna. That's good. And then we're going to darken the background. So it's a simple picture we're going to do. We're trying to simplify the painting as much as we can. And that's the real art, the art of simplification. One of the easiest ways to go in painting is to be representational, to be completely representational, because it doesn't really require interpretation. But when you simplify a subject matter, you need to interpret it. So now tackling the ear here. And it starts to form and come forward, all in an incredibly simple way. And that simplicity is what I really love. So we've got this area here, which we need to give the shadow of it, feeling that there's something underneath it. So a very light wash. See a light wash here. I'm just delving into a little bit of ultramarine blue and cerulean blue, just making it very wet so it doesn't cover much. And then that's going to be the shadow, and that's coming underneath here. Yeah, that's nice. And I might pick up a little bit more just to give it a little bit more darkness here. That's quite pretty, isn't it? And then the dark patch of the inner ear. And at the back of the ear. So it's very, very painterly and very, very gently done. Okay, that's a good start. So that's the basic underpainting of it done. Well, more than that maybe. And I try and keep the detail to a minimum, but there are some important parts of this which need doing. So let's try and carry on with this. So I'm going to paint, there's a little dark section underneath here, so ultramarine blue and burnt umber. So that's just under the chin, it sort of occurs, and behind the ear. So we're venturing now into the more detailed parts. And it's a very interesting thing, detail, because where do you stop? Toulouse-Lautrec was fantastic at, well, he was renowned for really knowing when to stop, and he stopped much sooner than other people did, to great effect. Right, so let's try and get the eye in. So we have the eye about there, so we got the lid of the eye, the darkness here. In the back of the head, there's a bit of darkness here, back of the ear. Really, you're trying to pick out the values in the subject. The values being, or in Britain it's called tone, and you're trying to pick them out. And that's what gives it a sense of shape and solid dimensions. Let's let that dry a bit. So, doing a little bit more to the eye. So, just going to catch the major values. So there's a sort of rim to the eye here, which I'm going to try and get in. Like that. And the highlights are so important, and this is where I use white paint. I think it's the best way of getting these little highlights, but it's not something everyone likes to do. Maybe add a bit of blue to it. Little blue there. So that's a bit of cerulean blue. It just has a little foil just to stop it being too white. Here we go. Because it's pottery, it has a lot of sheen to it. So it has a lot of highlights. So you need the white just for that as well. So I'll put a little bit in there. And then you got the little highlights here. The back, so there's a strong sheen on the top here, which I'll put in. And a reflection here. It's quite fun. This is the sort of fun stage. I enjoy the white paint. I think it's there's a lot of amusement to be had on it. Okay, so there's a little bit of fun there, and it didn't take very long. So there's the basics of a very impressionistically done, or simply done is the better word for it. It's simply done version of what I've painted. What I like to do now is just to add a few lines, just to make the shape a little bit more obvious. And I've got it's quite a soft pencil here. I think it's a 6B. And that just gives it, I don't know, there's something magical about a pencil and a drawing there. Maybe a few details. There we go. There we go. So that's the first one done. I'll carry on to the next one now. So I'll do this little baby one here. And it's the same process. I've given my palette a little bit of a clean. Not too much, but just to get rid of the main amounts. So it doesn't need to be perfect. So we'll start in the same way. So a little bit of cerulean blue, and we're going to have this underneath here. Have I told you I really like cerulean blue? I really like cerulean blue. It's an amazing colour. There we go. So I'm getting the front of the little guinea pig in. And you can see it's not just one colour of cerulean blue. There are sort of lighter patches here, which I've tried to copy the values on the guinea pig. Okay, and then we're going to get in the ultramarine blue, because it's quite dark, this one. Ultramarine blue. So remember not to mix them too much. So we'll put that at the back. So just trying to mix it darker now, so less water and more pigment. See, it's a little bit wet, so it's running. So just grab it, take it off. Gravity's taking it down. And then ideally I might want to let it dry a little bit longer. What I hope you notice with what I do is the simplicity of it. I don't go into detail, or I go into it as minimally as I can. So I'll let this dry in a moment, and then the darker elements here. Okay, so that's it basically done. So now I'll go to the next one while that's drying, the one behind. And this is a totally different colour. This is a raw sienna. But again, I'll be using the cerulean. So here's the cerulean blue coming in, and it's in the white of the guinea pig. Changing it. That's nice. And now I'm going to get in the cerulean blue, the raw sienna. It's quite interesting because it does go quite dark towards the back. I want to get that in. And I'm going to use burnt sienna, I think, to make it go darker. So I'd love to use a blue, but the problem with that is that it will go green. So yellow and blue make green. So I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to use burnt sienna to give it its darkness. And then it changes again and becomes lighter. So rinse the brush out and then just cerulean blue, and there's the back of it gone in. It's little patches of colour. They're really fun to paint, these things. And then we have the ear, which is really quite dark, but it may be a bit too soon to put that in. There we go. Lovely little swirls of colour. So we'll head back to my youngest now, here. And now it has dried quite a lot. And now we're trying to get the details in. It hasn't quite dried enough, but I'll just carry on anyway. I've actually got a little shadow here, which I think is nice and interesting. So let's try a different colour. Let's try making the shadow slightly red toned, just to separate it from the rest of it. And then clean the brush and draw the shadow out so it fades off. And the other one has as well, so I'll do that at the same time. That's a nice shadow coming in. So what I'm really trying to put across is interpretation. One of the really big skills of being a watercolourist is the art of interpreting. How do you interpret a scene? How do you stop with the detail, make something look real, but in a loose way? That's the real challenge. And if I can impart anything to you, that would be it. To try and paint in a simple way, which makes it look real, but is not real. Bit of burnt sienna. It's quite red behind there. Lovely little colours coming through on this. Very pretty colours. Nice reds and burnt siennas. That's really coming nicely. So, this one eye, very dark, right here. And I've done that in ultramarine blue. And then this one here, it might be a bit wet. Needs to be really dark. So you can see it's not quite dry enough there. Not quite dry enough. get the shadow in more. It's coming quite fun though. I quite like that. So now it's just a question of adding a few touches of white paint. So here, here, and that just gives out this the shine. I like the shine in these. You can see how amazing the little bits of white paint, how they bring things out. And the last bit right at the end of the nose. There we go. That's quite pretty there, I think. It's a lovely effect with watercolour. So that's my youngest there, my eldest twin, and now we're going to cross over to do Clara, my middle twin, or middle daughter really. Right, so it's the same process. The cerulean blue, so it's quite dark under there, that white. And then I've added some water to my next mix, and trying to put the colours in easily here. Yep. And then we have a band of colour now, of grey, nice grey colour. And there's a little bit of sort of red in that from my previous mix. I always like changing the colour of things. You don't have to paint the colours as they are exactly, that's not necessary. The value is much more important than colour. And I like to change it on the paper as well, so to give it a little bit of variation of that. I think paintings are helped with variation of colour. So that's that. And now the darker part at the back. So the ultramarine blue. And with ultramarine blue and burnt sienna I use as blacks. I do have a black in my palette, but I don't really use it very often. Right, so. And then we'll head to the Titania at the back. Last but not least. Again, start it in the same way, cerulean blue. Add a bit of that. So it's added a little bit of burnt sienna, raw sienna there, just to yellow it up a bit. You see how the blue and the raw sienna turn green, which isn't necessarily what I want, but don't panic. It'll work out in the end. That's one of the things I sort of feel about my painting. If I make a mistake, and we all make mistakes, I always feel that it'll be all right in the end. And when I look at a painting, I see marks and I think that's a nice mark, and I leave it because I've recognised it's quite a pretty mark. But that's one of the really great skills of painting, because most people they don't actually recognise the good mark and they paint over it. Okay. Now for the raw sienna at the back, a bit of raw sienna there, and maybe burnt sienna too. what I've decided to do over the next few weeks, I'm going to do another little course, sort of well, online course for you. You don't have to pay, and it's going back to the basics of it. I love watercolour painting so much, and I really do want to encourage people to paint in watercolour, because not enough people do. They're sort of blinded by oil paints, which are great. I love oil painting, but watercolours are neglected, I feel, and they shouldn't be. Okay. So I'll go back to basics with it, and from the very beginning, and hopefully run that course over the next few weeks. The part of the video making that I do is motivated by trying to get the message out about watercolour. It's such an interesting medium, and as I said earlier, it's so sort of forgotten. But there's nothing quite like watercolour. And I remember a phrase that Edward Wesson said, a wonderful phrase. He said, "When a watercolour comes off, there's nothing like it." And I really agree with that. I think watercolour is that. And when you get a good watercolour done, it's amazing. Right, so now I'm going to head off to the black sections of Tanya. So I might put a little lighter shade in first, and this will represent the lighter spots in the black. And then over the top will come the darker values. I feel as well with painting that I feel like I'm an inventor, and I invent a way of depicting something. I think that's quite a nice way of thinking about it. You have to come up with a solution to a problem, just like inventors do. My dad was an inventor, and he invented all sorts of things. Didn't make any money at it, but he was great at what he did. Okay. Right, so I've just moved into a slightly smaller brush. I haven't mentioned brush sizes yet, but largely it seems obvious to me, and I have a basic rule of brush size, and that is big area, big brush, little area, small brush. So depending on what I'm painting, I use the corresponding brush for the size of the thing I'm doing. So it's quite self-explanatory, really, and when you get into it, you'll instinctively know what the right brush size is. So now I'm going back into the first guinea pig, or the small guinea pig, sorry, and we're going to try and capture. So burnt sienna, there's a lot of red in that, burnt sienna in that part of it, the guinea pig, the ear. So here, and going to the back as well. Yeah, just a few little hints there. And now into the yellowy parts, so back into the raw sienna. So that's the raw sienna there. So I've used very few colours in this. It's only about 4 or 5 colours. Okay. Now, as I've got these colours, I'm going to go into this back area. Now I'm going to work on the really dark colours. So I'm going to be using the two main colours, which of dark, which again is ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, and they create a good. It's always on the wrong side of it there. Okay. trying to work out the value range. That's the most important thing. Ear. Just careful observation. That's one of the most important parts really of painting. It doesn't matter what the medium is to look. And it's just so common that people don't look. And it's worth testing yourself to say, am I really looking at that, or am I just imagining what's there? And the more experience you get with painting, the more you realise how much you have to look. Eye, pop the eye in. Let's pop the shadow in. Trying to keep the same colour, slightly warm shadow. Alizarin crimson and a bit of blue and brown. I do that because I'm trying to make it different from the rest of the guinea pig. And you see here, so now I want to soften this area here. So the way I soften it is dip the brush into water while it's wet and then draw it out. And that softens that quite nicely. It draws it in. It's a nice soft shadow. And I may as well put one on the other side as well here. I didn't put a shadow here and it needs that. So we're really getting there now, and it's just a few marks more and we're done. So this area here hasn't been described enough. There's a few sort of marks that need to take place just to give it that sense of roundness to it. So they're very, very fine, almost, let's see, look at that, there's almost nothing there. And it's just here, there's just to give that sense of it going in, and then here, giving that sort of shadow area. Maybe a bit more, and down the side here, more water. Learning how to use the water is so important. How much water? I have done a video on that if you want to have a look at that. How much water to use. Yeah, that's pretty much there. The eye's sort of gone in naturally. So the eye there sort of happened. I didn't have to do much to that. It's not quite in the right place, but that's... So we're going to the bit of white paint now. So I can change the colours nicely. And then we'll have a look in here. So the eye's a bit, not quite in the right place, but I thought it's fine. Real shine on the ear. Now the last mark is just the little nostrils coming in here. Just a hint of them really. Okay, so the last thing I like to do is to use my pencil, and this is a 6B pencil, quite dark, and I just go round a few things. I quite like that. And here. So there's the pencil work done, and I'm happy with that. I finished that now in my eyes. So I'll just give it a little sign. James Potter. There we go. There's the painting, done swiftly and with impressionism. I've hinted at things. That's what I love in watercolour painting. It's a wonderful way of hinting at things without going into detail. Interestingly, the first one is less impressionistic than the next ones. That one got more impressionistic, and they just kept on going to get looser and looser. And as I went into the painting, I thought they got better, at least in my opinion. And the pencil outline helps, always love that. And you can see the mistake I made here when I made the scale too wrong. I've left that. I've left the pencil drawing and the mistakes in, and that helps it too, I think. I have a mantra in my life. I don't know whether I've mentioned it before. I have a little phrase, and it's helped me a lot in my watercolour painting, and it's this: there's nothing interesting in perfection. And that sums up watercolour for me. I'm not after the pursuit of perfection, because I don't find that's very interesting. I like it to seem like an interpretation, which is what this is. I hope you enjoyed that painting. It was interesting for me to paint. I love the way that my style changed slightly in the painting of it, from one guinea pig to the next. I like that part of it. It's a good idea for you to go around the house and find something to paint from life. I always encourage people to paint from life and not from photos. Photos are an interpretation that the camera makes, and that's very different from the way that we see. So if you can, try and paint from life. As I mentioned earlier, I'm interested in doing a series of videos on starting watercolour painting, really, from the very, very beginning parts, and then developing our skills together. And even if you are an experienced painter, I think it's always worth going back to the fundamentals and trying to remind yourself of so many little tips that are so important to improving your painting. And I really love the idea of helping people to get into watercolour. It's such a marvellous thing, and I feel it's really improved my life. It's made my life much more interesting. I go everywhere in art galleries, and I look outside and I think, oh, that could be interesting to paint, or that could be interesting to paint, and it really fills my life. So Tanya and I will be getting along with those videos over the next few weeks, and the first one's probably going to come out in 2 weeks' time, and it's going to take a little while to get that sorted. And I thought I'd mention thanks again for the people who are supporting me so generously with buying me a coffee. That really does help. I really appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.